When you were arrested, how did that change you?
Well, when I first got arrested, I was scared to death. I'm not even gonna lie. Like being perceived as the man on the streets and then getting arrested and going into a place where everybody's bigger, everybody's badder. I just thought my life was over. I wish I would have went to school. I wish I would have done my homework. I wish I would have focused on the bigger picture.
Welcome to the Derelict Podcast. For the disparaged, depleted, and delinquent souls trying to find our way, we're talking about the scary part of the journey, where we don't know how it'll end. Let's be free to face our fucking failures in real time as the most unadulterated, truest version of who we are. No sugarcoating. Welcome to the shit show, you derelict.
Welcome to another episode of the Derelict Podcast. I am your host, Josh Abandonato Tomioni. And guess what, you guys? I'm so excited for this episode because we have a very special guest. His name is Jason Smith, and first of its kind on this show. From the age of 21 to 44, he was in prison, just released a few months ago. And I couldn't think of a better man that I'm just starting to get to know now to speak of redemption and your failures and your mistakes and the way that those don't define you. So I'm really, really excited to have you here. Jason, appreciate you being here, brother. First of all, I just want to start with the fact that if I were in your shoes, I'd be nervous right now. So if you are, no worries about that at all. We have a very supportive and loving community, and I guarantee you they want to hear your story. So I'm really excited that you are here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think you're looking forward to the most about this episode? Like let's just start off with what we're eventually going to tell the people later on in this episode, especially the men that are out there. What do you think you want to say to them later on in this episode?
You know, your mistakes don't define who you are, and mistakes and failures are opportunities to learn and grow.
Yes. So, we've talked about this a little bit. So just a real quick introduction. I am really good friends with Jason's dad, actually. We've known each other for several years, and he introduced us, obviously. And I had been hearing about Jason honestly, Jason, I've heard about you for years before we even met, because your dad's talked about you and how much, he loves you and all the different transformation that you've gone through in your life. Which is insane. I can't even begin to comprehend what you've been through. And I'm really looking forward to hearing that story. And, Jason, you know this because we've talked about this a little bit, and I know you've listened a little bit of the podcast as well. But this podcast is all about dealing with our failures and our struggles real time, and dealing with the fact that these things do happen. We do make mistakes. We do fail. We do have struggles, etc. And none of that defines us. None of that makes us a failure. So I'm really glad that you are in that headspace already after being in prison for such a long time, because I'm sure maybe you even know, I don't know. I'm curious actually. Do you know of any guys that have gotten out or they're about to get out that just had a completely different mindset than you?
Yeah. A lot of people, man, they don't have their priorities straight. They want to get out and hit the ground running and live it up and, catch up with, make up for lost time and stuff like that. They don't mentally prepare themselves for what's coming.
So I'm curious, how did you do that? How did you start mentally did you mentally prepare before you got out?
I did. For me, taking notes, reading. I have a very, very, very supportive family who, helped guide me, and I set my goals and certain things I wanted to do and when I wanted to do them and the order I wanted to do them in. And I was just laser focused, to be honest, after so long.
When did you feel like there was a time in that, almost 23-year history where it ramped up for you? Like, did it ramp up at the end where you're like, oh man, it's going to be, I don't even know if you knew, like, it's going to be 6 more months or it's going to be another year. It's going to be a couple more months. But like, did that change at all within the last couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely, man. When I got close to the gate, which is what, we call release, when I got close to the gate, it just magnified 1,000 times, maybe 6 months out, you know, and reality was starting to set in. I mean, I was in there for a long time, and I see a lot of people come and go. You know, they do 2 or 3 years, get out, and either stay out successful or come back. But it's, you know, I haven't seen too many guys do a lot of time and get released.
Like you?
Yeah, I haven't seen. I mean, first, I know it's happened because I've known people that have done it, but I've never been there with them, you know, on their release dates and stuff like that.
You know, as much as you want to share, again, anything you don't want to share, you don't have to share. But I'm just curious, would you share a little bit with us just about I mean, you went in barely as an adult, right? At 21 years old.
Yes, sir.
Can you share with us a little bit, just kind of about your childhood, maybe your teenage years, your early adult years that kind of led up to this? Again, you can share as much or as little as you want, but I'm just curious what kind of led up to this.
Well, it plagued me all the time, man. Growing up, I didn't really have any ambition. I didn't know what I wanted to do. School, I hated it. Women and drugs, I loved it. I mean, not, you know, in my teenage years. And I was just never focused. I never thought years ahead. I always thought about the next day, you know. And looking back, you know, I know that's really what the issue was with me.
Yeah, I relate to that. I mean, I think a lot of other people relate to that as well. What do you think? What do you think was kind of inside you that had you just like, why were you not interested in the future? What was so appealing, let's say, about the day to day, about, I don't know, can I say the next fix? Is that a fair word to use?
Yeah, I mean, I was just having fun, and I was like Peter Pan. I didn't want to grow up. You know what I mean? I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have any responsibilities. I didn't, you know, I was just living life and having fun. And reality never set in, you know?
Yeah. What do you regret anything about that time?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I should have, you know, I wish I would have went to school. I wish I would have done my homework. I wish I would have, you know, focused on the bigger picture, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What is there anything specifically you'd say to somebody that might be in that spot right now? Maybe they're in their teenage years or young 20s, or for that matter too, they could be in their 40s like us, right? Like people don't always grow up ever, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I've met men in their 60s that act more immature than kids in their teens, right? I don't think age necessarily matters, but for somebody that's in that spot, just like, I'm just going to live for today. Maybe they went through something difficult. Maybe they went through a difficult relationship transition, or like a divorce, or, you know, they went to prison, or they lost their job, or they went bankrupt, or whatever. You know, what would you say to guys like that? What do you wish you could have done differently?
Man, I didn't like failing. I didn't like trying difficult things. You know, I wouldn't attempt them. And while I was inside, I came across the quote that Frederick Douglass said, you know, without struggle, there can be no progress. And that stuck with me for years, forever. You know, it's still with me today. And it's just, you have to try hard things to, you know what I'm saying, to be better. And if you, like I said earlier, if you fail, that's just a learning opportunity, something to, you know, help you grow.
How do you see failure now, let's say? And I don't, again, so I think a lot of people have a hard time with this because they think when I say failure, I'm talking about just you being a failure as a person. That's not what I mean. I mean, when you fail, like how do you see that now?
Just like I said, man, for me, when I fail, I look back on that failure and say, I do it sometimes too much and I'm too hard on myself, but what could I have done differently? What could I have done better? And a lot of times it messes with my head, you know what I'm saying? Because you're like, damn, I should have did this, I should have did that. But next time an opportunity comes, you have all the tools, or you have more tools to use, you know?
I'm going to read the definition of failure to you. Okay. I'm not sure if you ever looked it up before, but you know, the first definition of failure, if you type it up, is just a lack of success, which is not helpful. But the second definition I've actually said on this podcast several times because I think it's really interesting. And that is the omission of expected or required action. I'll read that again. The omission of expected or required action. And I think that that's a great definition of failure for myself, at least, because all it's saying is whatever the action was supposed to be, you didn't do it. Right? So that doesn't make you or me or anybody else a failure as a person. It just means whatever we were intending to do or whatever was expected of us or whatever we should have done, not to shit on ourselves, but whatever we should have done, we just didn't do. Not looking backwards anymore. Now, how do you view it? Like if there is and if you don't want to call it failure because that makes you uncomfortable, that's fine too. But if there is a misstep or a mistake you mentioned earlier or something like that, now how do you view those?
Well, it's like I say, I don't want to keep saying the same thing, but just, learning opportunities, experiences to grow. I try to go into every situation with other people like my life depends on it. You know what I mean? Like, I want to get it right. I got to get it right. And if I do everything I can, I'm happy.
That's awesome. I love that. So if we kind of go backwards for a second, if you're open to that, let's go to the moment when your life changed dramatically, when you were arrested. When you were arrested, how did that change you? In other words, how did that change you specifically as a man, right? So you're this man, you're 21 years old or maybe 20 years old. I don't know how old you were when you got arrested. You're this young man in his young 20s, just living what you thought was the dream, right? Like drugs, women, partying, like fuck it, man. I've been through that stage of my life for sure. I just went through that stage of my life actually a lot later than you did because I grew up just really like conservative, naive, kind of had a stick up my ass for a long time, to be honest with you. And then I eventually got to a point where my life changed quite a bit. And this is not about me right now, but just to say that I went through that phase as well. And I know the appeal of it because you're like, fuck it, man. Who cares about 10 years from now? Right? Like I'm young, I'm attractive. I got women, I got drugs. Like what the hell else do I need? What changed with that mentality or just changed about you when you got arrested?
Well, when I first got arrested, I knew I was scared to death. I'm not even gonna lie. Like being perceived as the man on the streets and then getting arrested and going into a place where everybody's bigger, everybody's badder. You don't know what to expect. I wasn't a fighter and, you're seeing fights all around. You're just, I was scared, man. I'm not even gonna lie.
Are you talking about when you got arrested or when you first went into jail or prison?
Well, kind of a combination of both. I mean, I knew why I was getting arrested. I knew that.
Did you fight it though? Were you like, fuck this? This is all bullshit. Everything that I didn't do anything wrong. Like, where was your mind? Like, was it a spiritual awakening for you, where you're like, holy shit, I got to change my life, or was it more of like, fuck this, I'm the victim. Everybody else did something wrong?
It was a combination of both, man. Because I didn't have respect for consequences. Growing up and living that life. I thought I was untouchable. And when I got arrested, like reality kind of set in, and I just thought my life was over. I had a beautiful wife and that was gone, everything, how's my family going to look at me? I really, honestly, at that time, I cared about how other people saw me and stuff like that.
How about now?
I kind of had that same issue,
Well, what's changed though? I mean, would you say that you care about how people are viewing you or perceiving you as much now as you were when you were 21?
Honestly, it's weird for me because I can meet a person and click with that person and they find out, hey, this guy was in prison and what he was in prison for and all that's out the window, and that's really something I struggle with.
Has that happened a lot?
Yeah, quite a bit. And it's one of those things, I mean, I can't change it and I've accepted it and I deal with it the best I can.
I've always gotten in trouble whenever I've done that. But what do you think it is about people that makes uncomfortable? Like I've never been to prison. I've never been to jail myself. I'm not uncomfortable talking to you. You seem like a very genuine, authentic, real person, which is why I had you on the podcast. I don't invite everybody on here unless I really connect with them and click with them and think that their story is going to be really valuable. And I think that yours is. But I'm just curious, what do you think makes people uncomfortable about that part of your story?
Just, the reason why I was inside and, the way it was written, and I read it and I'm like, damn, this guy's crazy. So, I mean, I understand it. I don't like it, but like I said, it's something I had to deal with, and I do.
To heart, do you take ownership? Like, do you feel like that's you?
I don't feel like it's me at all. I feel like, I made a mistake, and that's not who I am at all. And I don't blame, I take responsibility for my actions, and I know that it won't happen again. I won't put myself in that situation.
How much will you share what was written about you?
It's difficult for me. I might later, I guess, in the show if it comes up like that. You know what I mean? Just, yeah.
Let's come back to, how do you feel like prison shaped your view of being a man? So one of the things that you said earlier, which I thought, you're 21, you're on top of the world, you're married, but you're still partying, you're drugs, women, whatever you're doing, right? All the fun stuff that 21-year-olds do because they feel like they're going to live forever, right? And there's going to be no consequences, to your point. Then all of a sudden you're in a very different spot. And again, I can only imagine what prison's like, but it's very rural driven, right? Very structured. Like, you have to do this and then you have to do that. Is that accurate? Actually, maybe just walk through. Like, can you just share with us a little bit about like what's a day in prison look like?
Well, for me, I mean, I went through stages inside, When I first got there, I was playing cards, playing dominoes, cooking, and worried about what was on TV and watching movies and playing sports and working out, stuff like that. But later, I went through stages, like I said. Later, I started just working a job, and basically it was like a 9 to 5 inside. I'd wake up, I'd go to work. I was initially, when I first started, I was working in a furniture factory, just kind of tagging orders, putting shipping labels on stuff. I did food factory work for a little bit. Well, they had a food factory where they produce all the food for the prisons and stuff and ship it out, and we worked in there cooking it. My favorite, which I did on my way out the door, was the optical shop making eyeglasses. Yeah. So that was pretty fun, and I like doing that. But after a while, man, like, I really started getting structured. I got routine. I'd wake up at 5:20 every day, and I knew what I was doing that day. I just had a routine. I was structured, and I like living like that. Some people call it robotic, but it's like, it's efficient for me, and I enjoy being like that.
How much of that structure was self-imposed versus prison-imposed? Like, how much structure did they have in there for you versus for yourself?
They have structure. I mean, basically, my structure works around their structure. I can work out when they tell me I can work out, for the most part. You know what I'm saying? So stuff like that, eating meals.
Is it like a window of time, or is it like you have to do it during this, 20 minutes, or is it like during this 2 hours, or like, help me understand that?
Yeah, there's a window. So like Monday, you usually have recreation time twice a day. And that's basically what my day was revolving around, when I could work out, to be honest with you. I mean, outside of work and stuff like that. So one day you might have yard at night.
Is that all like outside, like in the movies, or is it in a gym? Or?
Yeah, they have a gym. They have a gym, and they have a yard. I mean, it's the way you see it on movies is pretty much how it is, as far as the amenities, if you will. But yeah, man, just living structured and focusing and having time to study and exercise my mind and my body, working. That's really, I mean, how I did it, like I want to say I evolved, into improving.
It totally makes sense. Do you feel like that was a process? Like, were you different the first couple years you're in there versus the last couple years? Was it more focused on just, having a good time? Or I shouldn't say having a good time. You're in prison, obviously, but I mean, more just about like cards and games and movies at the beginning, and then it started turning more into like, how do I work out my mind and my spirit and my soul? And
yeah, I went through stages. When I first got there, I was angry. I was mad at the judge for giving me so much time. There's a lot that goes into that for me. I mean, I got way more time than I thought I was going to get. and I thought that I was supposed to get. I got what they call an exceptional sentence, which lengthened my sentence. So when I first got there, I was really pissed off about that. I wasn't.
How long did you think you were going to get?
I thought I was going to get 8 to 10 years. And on paper, I mean, that's what the law, that's what everybody was expecting.
Holy shit. And you got more than double, almost triple.
Yeah. And like I said, it's a long story for another time, I guess. But when I first got to prison, I was really mad and upset at the courts, at the victim, and I wasn't accepting responsibility. After I was putting my faith in lawyers and in the courts to right the wrong. And when that didn't happen, I kind of was like, fuck it, man, this is bullshit. I have to do this time. Again, I wasn't thinking about anything or anyone. I mean, I didn't see the light. I didn't see the end. Then it kind of went to, I gotta focus and improve myself, and that's when I started going to school and accepting that, I was where I was because of what I did, and once I accepted responsibility for my actions, that's when I was really able to grow and improve on myself.
That's amazing. Is there anything you can point to that helped you get there? What helped you accept the responsibility for what you did, your actions?
Just being honest with myself, just I messed up, to the point where I had to put my life in other people's hands, and I came to terms, I guess,
beautiful. In all seriousness, Jason, there's a lot of people, I referenced this earlier, that never get there, especially with your story, especially with the story of the fact that there was, I would use the word injustice, right? There's aspects of your story where the consequences were more severe than what you deserved. That's clear. And again, I don't know about you, man, but you met that bitter old man before? You ever met a bitter old man? I mean, you probably met them in prison.
Yeah.
It's just no way to live, dude. I was bitter for a long time about different things in my life that I felt were unfair and consequences that I received that I didn't think were fair. And it's a really miserable way to live, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Were there guys in prison that became like friends, brothers, mentors to you that did the same thing, that kind of helped guide you in that? Or do you feel like most of that just came from yourself? I mean, we're able to let go of the anger and the resentment and just all the shit, take responsibility for their own actions. I think it's important to note here too, and maybe I just want to say this to you too, like, you were wronged. All of the things that happened were not your fault. You do know that, right? I know for myself in the past,
yeah,
especially if I am the persecutor, it has been easy for me in the past just to completely shame myself and take responsibility for everybody's actions, which is really unhealthy, right? Like, you can't take responsibility for the judge's actions for sentencing you in a ridiculous way, right? Like, that wasn't your fault. You agree, right? That was a consequence of your actions.
Yeah.
But obviously an unfair consequence. And, for myself, I sometimes have a hard time delineating between what do I take responsibility for and what do I not? How do you do that? And do you still hold, would you say, maybe there's a two-part question. I'll come back to the first one in a second. Do you still hold resentment, anger at people like the judge?
No, I don't, man. It's like I said, when I accepted responsibility, it was just a burden lifted. I can't change it. I can't change what happened, and believe me, if I could, I would. And through my therapeutic stuff and everything I kind of did while I was inside, I got to let that negative emotionality go.
How do you do that today? Because I'm sure, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, man, and maybe you're just perfected this, but like, for me, man, like, even when I've let stuff go in the past, it still pops up every once in a while, right? It's not like it just disappears. So how do you deal with it? How do you deal with it if it pops up today?
Man, honestly, it's just, I feel like I don't know how to really say it. I feel like I'm just at peace with it, man. Like I've accepted, listened, what I did is not who I am, and I can get past all that. I just want people to be able to get past, where I came from and what I did. I'm not all my past. I'm not even tripping about that. I wasted too much time being angry.
There. I am not my past. I love that. Can you say that Frederick Douglass quote again? That was good.
Without struggle, there can be no progress. I love it.
Especially as what I have found for myself and men that I respect a lot is that as men, I firmly believe that we have to be challenged and struggle to grow. I don't know about you, but I've never met a man, not one time, who has grown, improved their life, healed, gotten to the next level of their development without struggle and pain and challenge. Have you? I mean, just your very essence. I can't even, I wish that I could talk to the 20-year-old version of you. What would the 20, because you seem, every time we've talked, just like so peaceful, present, at peace, just okay with who you are. What was the 20-year-old version like? If I was talking to if I was interviewing the 20-year-old, what would you be like?
I'd be embarrassing the shit out of myself right now. I just saying stupid stuff, swearing left and right. Probably be on here drunk or high, to be honest. you know, uh, just immature, man. No goals, no focus. Just acting dumb, man. Not thinking about consequences.
Did you have any period, like especially at the beginning of going into prison, where you had to go through withdrawal, like withdrawal from the alcohol or the drugs or the women, or just feeling like, I don't know. That's the word I would use.
Well, shit, you go through withdrawal from women every day in there, but I mean, not really. I'm not going to front. Like, I smoked a lot of weed, but it wasn't necessarily a gateway for me. I didn't really experience with harder drugs or anything like that. I just smoked weed, a lot of it, and got drunk. So I didn't really experience any withdrawals per se, like physically. I mean, mentally, it was a bitch. I'm not going to lie. Mentally, it was nuts, but physically, no.
Well, it sounds like you're a spiritual person.
Spiritual. I mean, that's an area I lack. I'm not really a spiritual person. I believe in God and treating others like you want to be treated. But honestly, I mean, that's it for me.
You just described a spiritual person. If you believe in God and treating other people in a respectful way, and that things happen in the universe, how is that not a spiritual person?
I guess when I think of spirituality, I think of church or worshiping and stuff like that, and I don't really get into that. So
Yeah. I think, and here's the reason I say this. This is a little off topic, but we'll get off topic for a second. I think that there's a lot of, well, first of all, a lot of people, and maybe you do too, have what is commonly termed as religious trauma. They grew up in some sort of religious setting that they don't like for whatever reason, right? Maybe abuse happened at the church or temple or whatever else. Maybe people were just mean to them. Maybe people were exclusive and excluded people based on religion or race or something else, right? Like religion does a lot of shitty things in the world. It also does a lot of amazing things. But what I've found, and I really think is true, is that I really think that everyone is a spiritual person because we're all spiritual beings, and including, by the way, atheists. If you ever talk to an atheist about their beliefs and their morals, and of course, I can't just say 100% of atheists, but every atheist I've ever talked to, if you talk to them about their morals and their beliefs and what they believe about the universe and everything else, they describe spirituality every single time. I think the reason that they like saying they're an atheist, just like probably similar to the reason that you said you're not spiritual, is because you don't want to be put in this box of whatever religious experience maybe you had. Is that fair? Because I really think that everyone deep down believes in, whether it's a God or a higher power, a universe or something that is bringing us all together and helping us grow and learn. Because if not, man, like, what's the other alternative? The other alternative is that you are God and I am God. How does that turn out in human history? Not good at all. We can talk about this right now because we're right in the middle of a political season, especially with the President of the United States of America about to be elected here soon, as of this recording. By the time this airs, we already have a president, no idea who it's going to be. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but one very common attack, no matter what side it is, I'm not even going to get on sides right now because it doesn't matter. No matter what side it is, a very common attack is like, well, that person thinks they're God and they don't give a shit about you. And here's the reason they don't give a shit about you. Have you noticed that's a common narrative on both sides? And I think that that is a deep human understanding of not wanting other people to be God over us. Because we know that the way humanity works the best is if we all work the best and we're all in unison through this universe, this God, this higher power, whatever it is that's bringing us all together and helping us learn these things. Otherwise, man, how would you learn the things that you learned? Do you think that came from within you? Like that wasn't in the 20-year-old version of you, right? So where did it come from?
Right.
I think that's kind of my point, man. Like I think that there's too much that's unexplainable about the things that we go through and the things we learn, not to think that there's some sort of higher power, universal structure, whatever, that's bringing us all together. Know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's get back to prison for a second, if you're cool with that. So still to this day, a Achilles heel of mine is women. I'm not going to lie. I can't even put myself in a structure. Wait, this is all men's prison, right? That you're in? Okay. I didn't want to just assume. I can't even put myself in the structure of just being around guys all the time. Like how was, I would assume that transition was really difficult for you at first, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, very difficult. I mean, there's female staff inside, but I mean, you got to interact with women accordingly, you know, in that environment. And it's tough. It's one of the hardest things I've dealt with just because, I mean, not even on the just attraction side, if you will, but just on the communication side. I mean, I'm out here like, you know what I'm saying? Seeing women and like being, I don't want to say nervous, but awkward, like talking to them and interacting with them is just, there's awkwardness.
Well, dude, you haven't done it in 23 years. Right?
Yeah.
Because I would imagine that, I mean, you don't really get much interaction with probably the staff besides just like a thank you or go over here. Or, I mean, what's it like? Is it just?
And it's tough because the interaction that you do have inside, you have to act accordingly because, you know, they're under the certain impressions. They have assumptions about everybody in there. So everything you say is scrutinized or subject to get twisted. You know what I mean? So,
well, I mean, I if I were in that position, I'm obviously not a woman, but if I was a woman in a man's prison, I would be on my guard at all times because you're surrounded by a bunch of criminals, by a bunch of people that did a bunch of bad things, whether it was, you know, really bad or not really bad, because there's a variance of that, obviously, in the criminal justice system. But if I'm a woman, I'm just always on guard. Like, you don't want to let your guard down, right? Because who knows who's going to do what? I mean, I'm sure it's probably the same way you felt just being in prison.
Yeah. And I mean, that's most of them are. And, you know, everybody's different. I mean, some of them will talk to you in there and be friendly. But I mean, like I said, it's awkward. You know, who likes to be around all men, you know?
What did that teach you about just needing women, if anything?
Honestly, that they should be highly respected and cherished. You know, if you find the one that you want to be with or as a friend or romantically, it's all about respect.
Are you single now? Are you heterosexual? Is that too personal of a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. The only reason I'm asking is because I'm just curious, just on the kind of on the romantic relationship side, how would you say you view women now in that context versus how you did when you were 20?
Repeat that question for me.
How would you say that you view women specifically on the romantic girlfriend, partner type side? How do you view women now in that context versus how you did at 20?
Well, at 20, I mean, I didn't respect them. I didn't take relationships seriously, and I took them for granted because to me, I mean, I don't want to sound like an asshole, but I mean, I was running through women. I didn't, I had tons of them, and now I don't have any.
Were you using them?
Yeah. Yeah, I was using them for pleasure, for just status, if you will. And now it's like I want to find that woman that I can cherish and give the world to and live with and cohabitate with and be on the same level, give and take. Not necessarily. I don't want to sound. I can't think of the word, but I don't want to say I want to take care of a woman, but I want us to take care of each other. If that makes sense, you know what I mean? I want that, I want that one woman that I can love and cherish. And
first of all, don't feel bad about anything that you're saying, because it's speaking to a lot of men right now. I guarantee you that are watching this and listening to this. It's speaking to me, honestly. A few months ago, I got out of a relationship of 2 years with somebody who I really loved, really cared about. And there's various reasons. This is not a breakup podcast. I've already done 2 of those. If you want to hear about the details, you can go listen to those. They were like beginning of October, I think, is when they aired. So feel free to go listen to those if you want to hear more details about it. So I'm not going to talk about that. But what I am going to talk about is the fact that one of the things that I realized the more time that passes out of that relationship was something that you just said. And that was, there was a good amount of my ego in that relationship. And one thing that I've learned is that a lot of ego in any relationship, but especially a partnership, doesn't work. And here's what I mean by this. It doesn't mean that I didn't care about her, love her, support her, do anything for her. I did all those things. I feel like we had a really good relationship for the majority of our relationship. What I mean, though, is that I definitely had an ego of like, well, she wants me more than I want her. There's basically nothing I could do that would send her away. And just, honestly, it hurts deep to even say that out loud and to admit it, because it feels very shaming. So I love the fact that you've gotten to this place. Dude, you're going to make a woman very, very happy one day, because I'm telling you, man, because you have an experience that most of us on the outside have not had. I mean, to be away from women for that long and to want to cherish and nurture and partner with someone. I mean, I don't know the stats, man, but I would guess you're in the minority there. I would guess most guys get out of jail. I mean, dude, you're a good looking guy. You're young. You're 44 years old, right? Like you are the pinnacle of the man that could go out and get all the 20-year-old hotties right now if you wanted to. And you could run through them and you could be like Andrew Tate and just fuck them all, right? And then put your numbers up into the thousands and be like, fuck everybody. Right? You could do that if you wanted to. Thank God for not doing that. Thank you for not doing that. I'm just gonna speak for all the women out there. Just thank you for not doing that. I think it's beautiful, the lesson you learned from that. Is there anything else that you want to say to that? Or actually, let's just speak to the men for a second that don't think there's anything wrong with that. What would you say to them? What would you say to the guys that are in the same mentality as you were when you were 20, where I'm like, I'm just going to go sleep with as many women as possible. And I'm just going to, they might not even think that they're using them. That might be a strong word for them, but I'm just going to sleep with as many as possible. And there's nothing wrong with that because I'm a guy and guys don't care and it doesn't affect us, right? If we have a sex with a bunch of women, what would you say to a guy like that?
Man, honestly, I'm trying to think of the best way to articulate it, but it's just like, it doesn't pay off. It doesn't pay dividends. It's not fulfilling for the long term. You know what I mean? That was my issue. I always thought about the moment, the next day, and that stuff's it's not fulfilling, man. It's not worthwhile. It's not beneficial long term, man. It's not productive. You know what I mean? It's a waste of time to do that.
You articulated it well.
I don't know, man. It's hard to articulate.
Why do you feel like it's a waste of time?
It comes and goes. You know what I mean? The man I am today, I'm looking for stuff that sticks, man. The stuff that I can see the progress in. I can't see the progress in just moving and grooving like that. I want to meet a woman and, let it start at a seed and see some roots come up and see some leaves come up and envision it like a big ass evergreen, you know what I mean? Redwood, whatever, one of those big ass trees. But that's how I view a relationship. It starts, with the hello, and next thing you know, you're 40 years married.
Here's some advice to you from somebody that has been on the outside and has gone through many relationship failures, including a marriage, long-term girlfriends, etc. Right? From the outside looking in, you look at this guy who's, just about to turn 41 here and single. And from the outside, that looks like a failure, right? Not married, not with anybody, etc. I would say it's not, because I've learned a lot, and I'm finally at a point right now where I'm really grateful for my singleness because of what I'm learning and how I'm growing. But here's the one thing I would tell you, brother, is that don't rush that and just be yourself, dude, because if it's meant to happen, it's going to happen. And you're going to attract a woman that you want with all the different things that you're looking for right now. You just will. If you act like yourself and you're just open and authentic and honest about yourself. Now, there's a difference between honesty and privacy. Here's the other thing that I would encourage you. This is something that I've had to learn the hard way. Maybe this will help you just with your communication with people about being in prison, that sort of thing. Just because you don't share everything doesn't mean you're not an honest person.
I like that.
Honesty and privacy are two different things. I can be authentic and myself and honest with someone like you without sharing every single detail of my life. Just because I'm hiding things from you does not mean I'm not honest. And a lot of people, I think, confuse those two things. But the problem is, without privacy, that's basically living a life without boundaries, which means I just tell everyone everything. Well, it's not a good idea for me to tell everyone everything. I might tell my really close friend who I really trust and know will take good use of this information, my deep, dark, disgusting thoughts, because I need to tell them to somebody. But if I shared those with my children, it would be inappropriate, right? If I shared that with a stranger on the street, it would be inappropriate. If I shared that with somebody that is really good friends with my ex-wife who's mad at me, that's stupid. I'm just asking for trouble. If I shared those here on the podcast for the entire world to hear, I'm very honest and vulnerable and authentic on this podcast, but I don't share every single detail of my life because it's just not appropriate and it's not helpful. I'm sure you've met those people, right? The overshares that just share everything with you. You're like, why? I just literally just met you at the grocery store. Why are you sharing with me the fact that you like touched this child when you were a young adult? Like, I just met you at the grocery store, man. Like, I don't want to know about that shit, right? So that would be my encouragement to you, especially when you're dating. There's a difference between honesty and privacy. So if you don't want to tell someone the first day you meet them that you're in prison, don't. I don't think that's being inauthentic. You have to get to a point where you know that this person is honest and trustworthy, and then you can start sharing some details.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
I want to change focus here for a second. What would you say are the top 2 to 3 things that were the most difficult, that were either events or just general things about being in prison? Top 2 to 3 most difficult things.
For me, just the main one was the lack of control. I mean, you can't pick and choose when you do certain things. And that was hard. That was really hard, having a structured schedule like that. I mean, you make do. You do what you can, but that was something that was difficult. Missing family, man, and friends and events, and not being able to really be a part of things is all it in a nutshell. You know, they say prison's more mental than physical. You know, it's just in your head. You know what I'm saying? Not being a part of shit, and life's moving and you're stuck.
I could only imagine. Absolutely. Was there physical things that were difficult that you dealt with? You know, getting the shit kicked out of you, or people trying to do bad things to you, or anything like that?
Nah, not so much. I mean, everybody's in there trying to live and come up and be as comfortable as they can be. I mean, there's fights, don't get me wrong, but I mean, surprisingly, I'm not going to front. I thought going in, I was like, damn, I thought there would be a lot more fights than I saw. I mean, there's fights frequently, but it's not like every day there's 5 or 10 fights and, you know, stuff like that. But I mean, yeah, and every prison's different.
Absolutely.
Some prisons have more things that happen, you know?
What would you say are the top lessons you learned inside?
Man, keep your word. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Because when someone does it to you, like says they're going to do something and doesn't do it, the way you feel as a person is not good. Like you get angry, you get frustrated. Keeping your word, staying loyal, taking responsibility, you know what I mean? And really, like I said, man, be a man of your word and do what you say you're going to do.
I mean, it sounds like reputation is important to you.
Yeah, I like things to be a certain way. I plan. And people hate me for it because I'm really like, hey, we got this going on this day, and this is what I'm going to do at this time. Just structure. I've taken a lot of structure I've taken from inside, man, and like I said, some people I don't know because I'm not super spontaneous. I mean, I'm spontaneous. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, hey, man, if I tell you I'm going to be there at 5:00, I'm going to be there at 4:50. That's my mentality. If I tell you I'm going to do it, it's consider it done. And that's one thing I've taken from being inside, man. And I live my life. That's how I'm going to live my life out here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we had calls, you were early. You're early this morning for the podcast. I love that. I mean, we need more people like that. I mean, trust me, it drives me, I born and raised in America, so we have, more strict time schedules than a lot of the world. But man, it drives me crazy when people say that they're going to be somewhere and then they're not there. And what drives me even more crazy is when somebody says that they're going to do something and their just actions just never fucking show it. Just over and over and over and over and over and over. I mean, you can't, and it's true for me too. And I'm guilty of this, guilty as charged, where I do that too, but I actually do it to myself more than I do it to other people, but like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And then I get lazy or I get tired or I get discouraged or whatever. And I don't do it. Like, my back's hurting. I'm not going to wake up at 5:30 this morning to work out. I had a long night and I worked so hard and, I won't do this, right? Like I'll do that to myself more than I will to somebody else. Like the odds of me canceling a podcast or an appointment or anything else is, I've canceled a few in my life. Like I never do it with somebody else. But the amount of times that I'll cancel something I promised to do myself is much higher. Same for you too.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Why is that? Why do we respect other people more than we respect ourselves? What do you think?
Man, for me, honestly, it all boils down to the golden rule. Like I treat people how I want them to treat me. That's another thing I've really taken from being inside. Like before I was a jerk, man. I was a dick. I was that guy that, yeah, I'll be there at 10 and just don't show up. And like, for me, the golden rule is just, I'm treating the next man, the next person exactly how I want them to treat me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's two different ways of looking at that phrase or two slightly different variations of that phrase. And one is treating somebody like you want to be treated, like you said. The other way is treating somebody the way you treat yourself, which is a much harder one for me because I'm like, yeah, but I don't treat myself as good as I want other people to treat me, right? But if I don't treat myself as well as I want other people to treat me, dude, the universe is a funny thing, man. If I don't treat people the way that I want other people to treat me, guess what happens with other people? They don't treat me that way, right? I've learned this the hard way. When I am caring and loving and respectful and everything to myself, it's amazing how the people around me are also. And when I'm not, and I'm living in a guilty space, a shameful space, a taking responsibility for other people's actions, even if I didn't do them space, guess what? Everybody around me is doing the same thing. It's funny how that works, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. It is.
So as we wrap up, man, how would you define now just being a man? Like what is masculinity to you? Like what is being a man just based on your experience and where you're at in life?
To me, being a man is being authentic and not being afraid or nervous to show your feelings and ask for what you want and just being real, man. Like, it's not about being the biggest, baddest, toughest guy. Like, I used to think like that. You know what I'm saying? And today it's just about being able to share your feelings and being able to accept criticism and advice from others, and just being willing to accept help when you need it and offer it when you can give it.
And it sounds like facing the struggle, like your Frederick Douglass quote, right?
Yeah.
What does facing the struggle versus not facing the struggle look like?
Facing it is getting up and going and crushing that obstacle and thinking about ideas and ways to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And not facing it is just giving up or making excuses, you know? It's just like right now I'm trying to find a job, and every time I go to an interview, I push forward. I learn from each interview. You know what I'm saying? I'm not giving up. I'm still going to interview. I'm going to get a job. You know what I mean? It's like, that's my goal. I'm going to do it. And I mean, just doing your best and focusing, you know, to fail and not keep trying is just, to me, honestly, is weak, you know? If you need help, ask for it, you know?
I follow a lot of different people right now that are just have very differing views on masculinity and what it means to be a man and everything else. And there's several things that are really popular right now. And one of them is stoicism, which is really just like, just push through, and really you're not allowed to have any emotions or deal with all this stuff. Like, you just have to just be a man and just do your shit, right? Like, that's stoicism in a nutshell. I know it's a terrible definition, but that's basically what it is. And then there's this other side of like, yeah, feel your feelings and deal with stuff and be in the moment, and at least with yourself, which I also agree with. But I think a lot of the times that side misses the, yeah, but get back up and keep going. So what I love about your definition is it includes both. I heard you say, we'll push through, figure out a way to make it happen. You have a goal, you're going to get a job. I love the way you worded that. Right? It was powerful. I'm going to get a job. I love that, because without having that powerful mindset, you just won't get one, because you'll find some excuse or reason, or you'll just blame everybody else for, saying the fact that you went to prison and they're not going to hire you, which is a very real struggle, I'm sure, but it doesn't matter for you. You're like, no, I am going to get a job. But the other thing that you mentioned that I thought was beautiful is also just being present with your emotions and dealing with them when they come up. I think that's one of the lacking things right now with a lot of these guys that are, more stoic related, is it's just pushing through everything. And eventually, as a man or a woman, but especially as a man, men break down, dude, if they don't feel this stuff. We're both right in the throes of being middle-aged men, which is, I don't know if you know this or not, the highest suicide rate in this country is middle-aged men our age. It's 35 to 50-year-old men. And I think a really big reason for that is because men do one or the other. They either sit and wallow in their emotions and go to therapy and, kumbaya circles and all this shit, and they never deal with their actual problems. They just play the victim. Or they do the opposite, which I see more often, of just push through, just push through, just push through. I don't have any emotions, just push through until one day they just break. And it's really sad. It's really sad. So just a quick note to the audience. If you're there, please reach out to me, please, leave a comment down in the show notes. Always have my email address, Instagram, everything else. I answer all of those, even though it's starting to become a lot, but I still answer them personally because I'm concerned for this world, and I'm concerned for men our age, man, because we got to get to a point where we can feel more honest and authentic and vulnerable with what we're going through. And you've been very much like that today, Jason. So I really appreciate that. Is there anything else before we end here that you want to say?
Yeah, man, I've been going through it and struggling, We're not our mistakes. We're not our failures. And they're just opportunities for us to grow and get better and chase your dreams and have goals and don't give up.
Absolutely. I love that, brother. Man, thank you so much for being on here today. I know this is really powerful. Absolutely, man. It was really powerful for me. I learned a lot. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate your story.
Thanks for having me, man.
Let's connect again. I don't want to lose touch. And I guarantee you that there will be plenty of people that watch this that are inspired by it. Plenty of people, especially people that are maybe feeling like a victim, and they see somebody that could easily feel like a victim, man. Like if I was in your shoes, it would be so hard not to feel like a victim. Like everybody's against me and I got this unfair sentence and everything else. And I just love how you've just moved on.
Yeah, I felt like that for a long time, man, and I wasn't happy. Once that went away, I got happy and I was growing. Part of the process.
Well, again, for all the viewers out there, if you liked the episode, please do me a favor. Whether you are on YouTube or you're just listening to this on one of the other ones, go to YouTube and click the like button. If you're watching, you can see that I'm pointing down. If you're not and you're listening, go to YouTube and click the like button. Subscribe on YouTube. Even if you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, subscribe on YouTube. That way you can see the different shorts that we send out, all the different videos. We make special announcements there and everything else. And of course, as always, most importantly, if this spoke to you in any way, if Jason's story spoke to you, which I don't know how you listened to it and it didn't speak to you, I guarantee you it did. Send it, please, specifically to a man that needs to hear this. Maybe it's a man that's just pushing through his emotions. He's just going to one thing after another. Maybe it's a man wallowing around and just sitting in his emotions and not really accomplishing the goals and the things that he wants in life. Or maybe it's just anyone that's just going through a rough time and they could be inspired by Jason's story like I was. Share this. So again, Jason, thank you so much for being here. And until next time, we will see you later, you derelicts.